welcome everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about, I think, one of the most fascinating faith traditions, religions in the world, Buddhism. But before we begin our conversation on Buddhism, I was wondering if anyone had any questions about Zoroastrianism, either online or here in Spindler. There was some looks from folks last week, like really, I thought, intriguing looks from folks as we talked about Zoroastrianism last week. So I thought maybe some things have sat with you over the week, or you watched it online, on the YouTube. Thank you, Bruce, for always getting those up online for us. I'm always shocked how many views there are of these things. There's like 25, 30, 40 views of like the video. I think that might be just you making sure it actually got up there, but it
played it a few times to figure out how to say
Zoroastrianism. Yeah, right. But someone asked, somebody emailed me and said, does it affect my belief in Christ? Does it affect my faith, my Christian faith, to know that so many of the things that we think are uniquely Christian actually were part of a different faith tradition? And I thought I might ask that question of y'all before I answered that myself. Do you wrestle with that? Do you struggle with that there's another religion that predates Christianity by 500 years before, that has many of the same ideas, traditions, stories that we have? Sherry, did you have your hand up? Ish?
Yeah.
You sort of had your hand up.
I did. I'm just listening to you.
Yeah.
I don't really struggle with it because I want to understand where it kind of developed from.
Mm-hmm.
Because all I've been taught my life is Jesus. So, prior to that, I had no knowledge of religion and where it was developed. I knew it was old and, the Old Testament and things like that, but not where Christianity kind of came from, the origins of it.
Mhm.
So to me, this is interesting why I keep showing up, because I want to know this, like genealogy.
Yeah, it is kind of like a genealogy. Yeah, and it kind of takes the DNA,
Yeah.
from other traditions and makes it uniquely its own. We're not this week, the sermon's on part of the Sermon on the Mount. That's the Golden Rule, right? Well, the Golden Rule is found in Confucianism, it's found in Judaism, it's found in indigenous traditions, it's found in Christianity. That doesn't make the teaching less authentic or less important or less real just because Jesus.
Three waiting room people.
Oh, there are waiting room people. Thank you. Not that there were, so that's one way of looking at it, Sherry. Yeah, that's great. Anybody else? Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that all of these religions that we've studied at their foundation are pretty much have the same, there's a person, or like we believe, Jesus is for us, but like there's something or someone that they worship, and that it's a lot of their traditions kind of mirror ours, even though they're a little bit different. But it's amazing how similar they are at their core.
Yeah. That's a good comment. Thanks. Anyone else want to share, or online? Anybody? When you learned about Zoroastrianism, we're mostly talking about Zoroastrianism because there's just so many, like the final judgment, right? That a savior will be born of a virgin and will lead the battle against against the powers of darkness and everything. You're like, wait a second, I thought that was our story, and so
which one came first, Christianity or
Zoroastrianism predates Christianity by about 500 years. It maybe not a little bit more. So anyway, not that I'm trying to cause trouble or make you struggle or make you wrestle. I was just wondering if someone asked me that question. Yeah, Ellen.
Jill, I'm thinking back to a time about 15 years ago when I was working with a physician, and I worked in communications, and I was getting to be a fly on the wall as he was prepping a patient to take them into the cath lab. And that patient asked the physician, do you mind if we pray before my procedure?
Mhm.
And I saw the physician say, I think that would be a great idea. Well, what I knew, as I listened to this Christian prayer, what I knew was the doctor practiced Islam. He's
Oh,
Muslim.
sure. Yeah, he's Muslim.
And I talked to him afterwards and I said, so how do you feel about that? And he said, I have a feeling we're praying all to the same God.
Yeah.
And he said, and if we're not, and it's God that's right, I think that God would be okay with the fact that I worship Allah. And if Allah's right, I think that he'll be okay with these people
Sure.
practicing and worshiping God. And if we're both wrong and it's something else, he said, I think they'll be okay. And we live our lives
Yeah.
very similarly.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it was really nice to hear that.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. By the way,
What did Mark say on Sunday? What did Mark say on Sunday? We don't get it and you don't get it either, or something of that,
yeah,
kind of the similar.
yeah, yeah. I was, this really profound, beautiful moment that this doctor had with you, Ellen. I immediately jumped to South Park, which says that the answer is Mormonism. The correct religion is Mormonism in the South Park universe. And so, so it's everybody's, like I said, got this really beautiful connection, right? I think that's what we're maybe finding out about, and the heart of that doctor to pray in that way. That was the most important thing right there. The kindness, the concern, the love they showed for the patient. Anyone online like to make a comment? Or like mostly we're talking about Zoroastrianism. And how that maybe impacted our thoughts about our Christian faith, but even if it's any of the religions we've talked about so far. Okay.
I have a comment. I have a comment. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. Hello, everyone. I look forward to seeing you all coming home. Yay! My comment is I think that this kind of education is so important for all faith traditions to really understand. I feel like oftentimes there's blinders on faith traditions that think that they have historically always had the quote unquote truth, and understanding how so many other religions believe and understanding your own roots historically just kind of puts you a little bit more in context and gives you a little bit dose of humility.
That's a good comment. I'll stand to be a little bit more humble, that's for sure. No, and that's kind of how I answered the question when someone emailed me about this. Was I don't look at Zoroastrianism as right or wrong. I look at Zoroastrianism as part of the Christian DNA, and that when our Jewish forebears were in Babylon and in Persia, and they interacted with Zoroastrians, they experienced a great deal of religious tolerance and appreciation, and it was those interactions which got our Jewish ancestors to start to adhere to monotheism and a real belief in the oneness of Yahweh. And well, that is a direct line to Christianity. And so if it wasn't for Zoroastrianism, there wouldn't be monotheistic Judaism. If there wasn't monotheistic Judaism, there wouldn't be Christianity. If there wasn't Christianity, I wouldn't be here. Like, that's the way I kind of looked at it. And so I actually think of it as my ancestors. I have one ancestor, my great-great-grandfather, the Reverend Adam McBain, who pastored a church on the southern end of Loch Ness, of all places. And he saw the monster, I'm sure he did. Sure he did. But you know, if I use a prayer of his in my wedding ceremony that he wrote, but I can't use it in its original language because I can't read it, because it's all this theists and Taoists and stuff, right? So I had to update it for my own modern tongue. And I kind of feel like that's kind of what Christianity did with Judaism, what it did with Zoroastrianism. And what we're going to learn today is what Buddhism did. This is a nice segue. Look at this. This is what Buddhism did with Hinduism, which is one reason why we study Hinduism before we study Zoroastrianism. So I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if I'm doing it wrong and you don't see it. Here, let me do this. Where's share? There's share.
She's right back here.
Where's share? There she is.
Share is right by Sunny.
Oh, gosh.
A nice one.
There we go. You guys are comes with the jokes. You guys came with the jokes today. Oh, hang on, it's coming.
Told you I was too tired to talk last week, so you're gonna get.
Now I'm getting, here we go. Okay.
Forgot your plug.
All right, online, can you see the slide? It should say Buddhism.
Yes.
You.
Count on somebody to
I
get
appreciate, yeah. So Buddhism, there we go. So Buddhism is grounded in the and comes from the word Bud, which is actually Budh, Bud, which is a Sanskrit word which means to be awakened. And Buddhism, the Buddha is the awakened one or the enlightened one, and Buddhism is the pathway to enlightenment. And it grew out of Hinduism, which is, again, one of the reasons why it's very important for us to study Hinduism to begin with. And you're going to hear many of the same terms that you heard when we talked about Hinduism, like samsara and dharma and karma. These are also terms that are used in Buddhism, though they mean different things in Buddhism than what they mean in Hinduism. There we go, grab my clicker. So there's lots of different representations of the Buddha. Sometimes you'll see a lot of people talk about like skinny Buddha. Other people talk about fat Buddha. Their term, not mine. And a lot of those are mostly cultural representations of the Buddha. The Buddhism spread. We'll talk about the spread of Buddhism here in a moment. But for our opening prayer today, I'm going to have you listen to a chant. And the chant in Buddhism is being done by Tibetan monks. And Tibetan Buddhism is a specific branch of Buddhism, a specific denomination of Buddhism, of who the probably the most famous Tibetan Buddhist is. Say it louder. You know, you're right. Say it louder. The Dalai Lama. That is correct. The Dalai Lama is probably the most famous Buddhist in the world, but he is very much grounded in what's called Tibetan Buddhism. So these are going to be Tibetan Buddhists, and they are chanting the Eightfold Path or the Eightfold Noble Path. That's what you're hearing, but you're going to hear it in Tibetan, and it's not transliterated and it's not translated into English for us. So that's what you're going to hear. We're going to go over the Eightfold Path next week. So I'm not going to kind of move ahead of that. But it is, that's what you're hearing in this opening chant. So I'm going to invite you to put everything down and to kind of ground your feet. Not ground your feet, but kind of rest your feet on the ground. Make sure they're connected to the ground. So if you have your legs crossed, uncross them, put your feet squarely into the ground. Take everything out of your hands and then just kind of find a relaxed position and just kind of think about if you're finding stress or tension in your shoulders and your jaw and your fingers and your joints, just kind of relax them as best as you can. Particularly, a lot of us live with our shoulders up in our ears just because we're so tense. So just kind of really intentionally drop your shoulders. Don't force them down, but just kind of relax your shoulders away from your ears and really elongate that neck and just kind of find a natural position in that way. And then we're going to listen to this chant from our Tibetan Buddhist friends. So what'd you think? Obviously, we don't know exactly what they're saying in Tibetan, but what was that? What was that practice of hearing the chanting from the monks like?
Different,
Different? In what way, Tim?
almost like monotone. you
Yeah.
know?
Right. Yeah. So that's
There's a
a
little fluctuation, but
but very much so. Like anyone grew up Catholic? Anyone and chanting the Psalms, the cantor chanting the Psalms during the Catholic Mass? Not to some of you are like, why do you always bring up the Catholicism? But very similar, right? The chanting of the Psalms is awesome. And so that's kind of what is very similar to this. 10th grade. Anything else about that? Very relaxing, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. That monotones is supposed to put you in a sort of a certain state, Pam.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So many of our hymns are supposed to arouse like joy and glory and everything, and the Tibetan chants are very much supposed to like kind of bring us down, not down, but like not emotionally down, but bring us to a more relaxing, peaceful state. Whereas our hymns are so like, let's stand and sing, sort of thing.
I think the repetition helped.
The repetition helps too.
Yeah.
Anyone ever been to a Taizé Christian service? Yeah. Did we used to do a Taizé service here? Yeah, I think I heard y'all say that once. Brian's in the room. We'll let Brian in. So very similar, where it's repetitive, and that repetition helps us sort of remember, right? Those type of things that we learned as children, those little sing songs that we learned as children, it's still very, very much works as adults. So Buddhism began in right on the border of modern day Nepal and India. India, the birthplace of so many religions. There's something about the Indus Valley that has been a sacred ground. Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East and Nepal or India really do have sort of the monopoly on ancient religions. But right on the border of Nepal and modern day India is where the Buddha, who we'll talk about here in just a little bit, was born, and that's kind of thought of as the beginning and the birthplace of Buddhism. This is the monastery and the shrine to the Buddha in his birthplace of Lumbini, and thousands of pilgrims will make a pilgrimage to the site each and every year. There is a monastery and a Buddhist seminary on site. training the next generation of monks. But it is one of the holy sites in Buddhism. But Buddhism exists all around the world, though it is very much concentrated in terms of its geographic location, very much in Southeast Asia. Really the only Western country that has any sort of significant population of Buddhists is the United States. Even Western Europe and Canada doesn't really have a significant population. Almost every major city in the United States has at least one Buddhist temple, if not multiple Buddhist temples. We'll talk about why there may be multiple Buddhist temples later, probably next week. But overall, there's about 550 million Buddhists in the world, which makes it the fourth largest religion. I'm going to use air quotes because we're going to talk about that here in just a second. Fourth largest religion in the world after Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. But again, the vast majority of those of Buddhists live in Southeast Asia, and the bright red countries, Mongolia, Cambodia, Korea, Thailand, Bangladesh, are heavily populated with Buddhists. In fact, because of Hinduism and Islam's influence in India and in Pakistan, you can notice that India is the same color as the United States in terms, and so it there's not a real significant Buddhist population in India, which is the birthplace, like I said, of Buddhism. You can visit. There are actually 3 Buddhist temples, though I only have pictures of 2 because the third one, gosh, they really enjoyed their they really protect their privacy because I can't find a picture of them online at all. Even though they're just down on South Division, I had half a mind of driving up South Division from Kentwood today and like stopping and taking a picture, but that felt stalkery, so I didn't. But there is one on South Division. The Grand Rapids Buddhist Temple and Zen Center is just down on South Division, just south of here. But there is this here on the left is the Chua Lin Sun Buddhist temple in Belmont, Michigan, and then this one is the Lao Buddhist temple in Holland. Has anyone been to either one of these 2? We were, as a confirmation cohort, we were supposed to go to the Belmont one, and we did not end up going there. I felt really bad that we had to cancel. I was really looking forward to going, but again, they welcome visitors. If you wanted to get together and drive out to Belmont or drive over to Holland or drive down to South Division, they would welcome you. And I think I said this when we talked about Hinduism, even though Buddhism has no tradition in Southeast Asia of getting together weekly to pray or to sing or to take classes. Because of the influence of Christianity in America, every Sunday morning, Buddhists get together at the temple in Belmont and in Holland and down on South Division to pray and chant and share a meal and go over the teachings of the Buddha together, because that's what you do on Sunday morning. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not. You get together and you do these religious things on Sunday morning. That's when you do it. So, if you, like I said, if you wanted to go visit them, they are open other hours of the day and other hours of the week. So the first question I want to ask and raise is Buddhism a religion? Or is it a way of life? Is it a philosophy? Is it a new age self-improvement program? Some would say yes. Others would say no. There is no such thing as a supreme, all-powerful creator God in Buddhism, but there are gods in Buddhism. There is no savior, there is no son of God, there is no great prophet, if you will, though it very much was started by one person who then spread his teachings throughout India and then throughout Southeast Asia in the Buddha, though he in no way, shape, or form ever claimed divinity or sacredness. He always thought of himself as just a mortal human being, and he died the most mortal human being way that a person could. He died of food poisoning. He did. He died of the Buddha died of food poisoning, and we'll talk about the story of the Buddha here in a moment. But this is how kind the Buddha was in his life. He knew the food was bad, and he knew that he was aging and frail, but someone made him a meal, and there was no way that he was going to offend the person who made him the meal, even though he was pretty sure that the meat was bad. And so he ended up eating it anyway, ended up getting food poisoning and dysentery, and died of an infection a couple of days after eating the meal. That is kind. My mom would be so proud of him. Just you don't offend someone who's made you a meal. I actually think that Buddhism is neither theistic or atheistic. It is both theistic and atheistic. Because the Buddhism, like I said, acknowledges spiritual beings, which are called devas, but they don't worship God like we worship God. This is a quote from one of my favorite books, Sapiens, by Yuval Noah Harari. Anyone know this book? Can't recommend this book enough. It's kind of like a history of history of thought in humanity. And this is one of my favorite quotes from the book. Buddhism does not deny the existence of gods. They are described as powerful beings who can bring rains and victories, but they have no influence on the law that suffering arises from craving. If the mind of a person is free of all craving, no God can make him miserable. Conversely, once craving arises in a person's mind, all the gods in the universe cannot save him from suffering. In fact, when we talk about samsara here in a moment and the cycle of rebirth, you can actually, in Buddhism, be reborn as a god. But you can then be reborn once you are a god, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to achieve enlightenment. Gods, devas in Buddhism experience the same craving and suffering that all other life in the universe experiences. So gods are not necessarily they are a higher being, but they're not seen as these divine, all-powerful beings. So regardless if you go down the South Division, you go to Tibet, you go to Cambodia, you go to Mongolia, regardless of what denomination in Buddhism that you interact with, if you know the three jewels, the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path, you will be squarely within the Buddhist tradition. So when I taught this at university and in community colleges, I always called it Buddhism by the numbers. I actually find Buddhism to be the easiest religion to remember, because if you remember 3, 4, 8, you are in good shape. So the three jewels, the Four Noble Paths, and the Eightfold Path. Today, we're only going to talk about the first jewel, and we're going to talk about the Four Noble Paths, or the Four Noble Truths, and we'll talk about the second and third jewel and the Eightfold Path next week. But if you remember 3, 4, 8, you will do well to remember the precepts and the tenets of Buddhism. But ultimately, Buddhism is an answer to the great existential question: is why is life full of suffering? And Buddhism, that is called Dukkha. And maybe a different way of understanding Dukkha is dissatisfaction. So it is an internal craving. It is a spiritual, emotional, and physical state that in life, you will always want more, want something different, want something better. And what we do in our behaviors in life to get the more, the different, the better, then causes other people to have pain and suffering. Everything has consequence. Every action has a consequence in Buddhism. And so many of our actions, our thoughts, our words, our motivations are determined by our reaction to dukkha. How can I have less suffering? How can I have less dissatisfaction? And this is a holistic existential reality that all things in the universe struggle with. It's caused by our attachments to things and to people. And one of the ways that that dukkha was described to me was, so you love someone, which is a good thing. You've fallen in love. That's beautiful. But that relationship comes to an end, whether through you grow apart, divorce, death, every relationship. This is one of the most Buddhist things you'll ever hear. This was told to me by a friend of mine who practices a very profound, rich Buddhism. He's like, Darryl, on a long enough timeline, every relationship comes to an end. It's like, no, not as a Christian. I get to see. We believe in paradise, man. I'm gonna be reconnected with all of my loved ones. And he was just like, all right, you live with that. But as a Buddhist, he would tell me, like, all on a long enough timelines, all relationships come to an end, and that causes dissatisfaction and suffering. And the harder you try to hold on to a relationship, the faster it slips through your fingers, and the more pain and suffering and dissatisfaction it can cause. That's one way of thinking about dukkha. Another way is you're dissatisfied with you're dissatisfied with the amount of money that you have in your bank account. And so you struggle, you endeavor to change jobs, but you have to go back to school to get new training. Well, you have to keep a job to be able to pay for your livelihood. So you're working 40 hours a week, and then you're going to school 20 hours after that. And so you're burning the candle at both ends. And so even though you're striving for something good, it's really hard. And you don't like going to class anyway, because going to college is a young person's game. And so you're incredibly dissatisfied by the experience. Even good things that you strive for in life come with an aspect of dukkha. It's not that we can't have nice things. It's not that you can't have loving relationships. It's not that you can't have beautiful moments, profoundly, spiritual experiences, but those things are fleeting and you can't hold on to them. They're here at one moment and they're gone the next. And so no matter how hard we try, according to Buddhism, even though we might have a beautiful moment, that moment will pass and the next one will be hard yet again. Does this resonate? A lot of people, when they hear this, so a lot of times this is translated in a shorthand in Buddhism as life is suffering, and that sounds so bleak. Buddhism isn't saying that life is suffering as much as if you are alive, you will suffer. And that is inescapable. That is part of our reality. And one of the things that causes us to suffer the most is the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. We can't get out, we cannot break the cycle of life and suffering. Not in this life, not in death, because all we'll do is be reborn again into the cycle. And part of what causes us existential grief in Buddhist thought is that we know that there is no escape from this. One of the things that often will bring a modicum of relief is knowing that the suffering will end, right? You give something up for Lent. Well, 46 days after you started on Ash Wednesday, you'll be able to give it up. You'll give up what you gave up and you'll start enjoying the thing that you wanted again. That things are going to come to an end, but in Buddhism, the thought is, gosh, it's just going to go on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And you can't break this cycle. And in Hinduism, which is Buddhism kind of grew out of, the Buddha himself became dissatisfied with the rituals, with the prayers, with the piety of his Hindu upbringing, and he thought he wanted a different way of attacking this problem of samsara. So samsara not in Buddhism not only is happens after death with the transmigration of the soul, but it also happens in our life at this time. And so in Buddhism, the whole goal is to end dukkha, to end suffering and this cycle of suffering. When you reach a place where you are no longer controlled by dukkha, by suffering, by this constant craving and dissatisfaction, then you have reached nirvana or enlightenment. Nirvana actually translates literally to snuffing out. Because in Buddhist thought, that craving is like a bonfire. That dissatisfaction is like a bonfire. And we just constantly continuously feed the fire more wood. Because that's just what we are. We're just constantly dissatisfied. And so in Buddhism, the whole point is to break free of that. And you can, in Buddhist thought, you can actually obtain this in one lifetime. The chances of you doing it are poor. They're not optimistic that you will break the cycle in one lifetime, but you can, in Buddhist thought, break it in one lifetime. Where in Hinduism, there was no chance of that in Hinduism. And so this is the attainment of breaking this is done by following some very specific spiritual disciplines. And the pathway to nirvana is by following or adhering to what are called the three jewels. The three jewels are the Buddha, and so reflecting on the life and the teachings of the Buddha, the Dharma, which is the spiritual disciplines of Buddhism that are based on the Buddha's teaching. So the Buddha's life, the application of the Buddha's teachings, and then the Sangha, which is community. Community is vitally important in Buddhism. We cannot do this alone. And we need each other's support, care, love, encouragement, correction, all those things that happen in community. And the community is called Sangha. So the three jewels of Buddhism is the Buddha, the Dharma, which is the teachings, the application of the teachings of the Buddha, and the Sangha, which reinforces, encourages, and supports those who are following and living into the Dharma. Today, we're going to only be able to focus on the Buddha. But many people in the Buddhist world will actually begin their day with this mantra. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. It's kind of their trinity, right? And this is a very common morning chant or morning prayer, if you will, in the Buddhist world. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I'm going to live my life by the application of the three jewels. So as I walk this path of enlightenment, so that I can be free of dukkha and end this dissatisfaction and suffering.
Darryl, why is it
Yeah.
called the Buddha and the Dharma and the?
Yeah, that declarative article, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these things are very specific. The Buddha is, well, we're about to get to the Buddha. And when we talk about, there have been other Buddhas, but there are Buddhas out there. But man, when we think about the Buddha, we're talking about one person. We're going to talk about him.
We talk about the one true God.
So there is one Buddha. Other people can reach enlightenment and they themselves are Buddhists. The Dalai Lama, right, is a Buddha. He is an enlightened one. But he is not the Buddha, who we're going to talk about here in just a second. The Dharma is the four noble truths and the Eightfold Path. Those don't change. So that is not a way, there is the way. And then the Sangha is very specific to you, right? So what is your Sangha? So, and usually those are, and we'll find out this next week, Tim, that those are usually geographically located. People don't go searching for the Buddhist temple that reflects their theological beliefs. They go to the Buddhist temple that's like in their neighborhood. Yeah. Well, which is what we used to do, right? That used to be the old parish model where everyone went to the church in their neighborhood. It might have been the Catholic church or Lutheran churches, but they went to the one in their neighborhood. Downtown churches, some people went then, but a lot of people just went to their neighborhood church. So we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about the first jewel, which is the Buddha. And when we talk about the Buddha, we are talking about Prince Siddhartha Gautama. He is the Buddha. And he was born in Nepal on the border of what is modern day India and Nepal in the 5th century BCE. Can anyone remember what was going on in Judaism in the 5th century BCE? Just to kind of put it in context, what was going on. That was the Babylonian exile. Jerusalem had been destroyed, and the Babylonians had taken the Jews into exile into Babylon. So Siddhartha Gautama was a prince born to a Hindu ruler of a region in what is modern day Nepal. And his father, when Siddhartha was born, was visited by a sage, by a wise teacher. And this sage told a prophecy about Siddhartha, that he was either going to be the greatest king the world had ever seen, or he was going to be the greatest spiritual teacher the world had ever seen. And his father decided for Siddhartha that he was going to become the greatest king ever. And so he gave a command that Siddhartha was to never leave the palace. Because that's not going to backfire on the king at all, right? So Siddhartha grows up never leaving the temple, the palace grounds. There are high 12-foot walls around the palace, and he has every luxury that you would ever want, every pleasure, every riches. His whole life is full of beauty and goodness and great tasting things. And he grows up to be a phenomenal human being. From all accounts, he is a really special person. He is handsome, he is smart, he is brave, he is talented, he is athletic, he is kind, he is everything that you would want. This is a picture of him picking up a bow that's so heavy that no other human being can pick up. And not only does he pick up the bow, but he shoots the bow and hits the target, of course, in the bullseye, because he's Siddhartha. He was married to, I can't remember his wife's name, but he was married to a beautiful princess who came to the palace, and God love her. Once she came to the palace, she couldn't leave either. He had children. The children were amazing. Everything about Siddhartha is great. But Siddhartha starts to have these really deep questions. Why am I, the easy ones. Why am I here? What does this all mean? What is life all about? And even though I have everything at my disposal, am I unhappy? And yes, Alice.
I have a book named Siddhartha.
Yes, you do. By Graham Greene.
I read it so long ago, I don't remember.
You read it in the '60s. And I'm telling you, you read it in the '60s.
You probably read it in 20.
And it was very much part of the hippie counterculture. And I'm not saying you were part of the hippie counterculture, but you were intrigued enough to read the book. Yes, you were curious.
Yeah.
Yes, the book is called Siddhartha. It's by Graham Greene, and it does tell the story of Siddhartha in a very fictionalized way, and very much in a hippie sort of way. I've also read the book. It's really good. Yeah, because yeah, it's really good. It's really good. It's really good stuff. So one day, Siddhartha decides that he's going to climb the walls. He tricks his father and he climbs the walls, and he actually goes into the city. And for the very first time in his life, he sees what's called the four sights. For the very first time, he sees sickness. He's never seen a sick person in his life. Every time a servant in the palace would get sick, the king would fire them and bring in someone who was healthy. He'd never been surrounded by sickness. He saw death up here in the corner is people carrying a dead body. He'd never seen death before. Not even a dog, not even a bird. He had never seen death before in his life. He had never seen poverty. And everybody around him was finely dressed and ate the finest of food. And then finally, his last sight is he saw for the very first time a spiritual teacher who was an ascetic. What is asceticism? Does anyone know what asceticism is? Say that, Alice?
I don't know.
Oh, you don't know?
It's
Asceticism is a spiritual discipline of renunciation. You renounce all physical pleasure. And it is usually very, very extreme. And so Siddhartha was very intrigued by the ascetics that he met, who were praying and meditating on the side of the road. And so he abandoned his family and his life in the palace, and he joined the ascetics. And for several years, Siddhartha practiced a severe form of asceticism. He renounced all worldly goods, all worldly pleasures, and he denied himself even the smallest amount of food. Siddhartha was always used to being the very best at everything he did, and he had the mindset, well, if I'm going to be an ascetic, I'm going to be the best ascetic I can be. And so there's a legend that Siddhartha survived either on 1 grain of rice a day or 1 spoonful of soup a day. It's told, the same legend is told with different amounts of food, but that he would eat 1 grain of rice and that's it. He would deny himself all other food. He became emaciated. He became so weak that he could barely keep his eyes open. And yet, even though he was practicing this extreme form of a renunciation and asceticism, he was still dissatisfied. He still had the same longing. He still had the same questions. And so he decided that completely just going without food and drink and everything was not the way. He had tried a life of luxury and he found it wanting. And he found the life of asceticism and renunciation and he found it wanting. And so he rejected both luxury and renunciation, and he decided that he was going to go meditate until he found the answer. He actually started eating some food, he regained his strength, and once he had regained enough strength, he sat underneath the Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree, he found a Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree is a large ficus that has heart-shaped leaves. It's actually an amazing tree. And oftentimes the roots are exposed and the branches grow wild. They're absolutely phenomenal pieces of creation are the Bodhi tree. And so Siddhartha sat at the base of the Bodhi tree, and as he meditated, creation tended to him. The squirrels, the bunnies, the birds, the deer, they fed him, made sure that he had food. The rain was collected in the Bodhi tree leaves, so he made sure he had water. Creation took care of the Buddha as he meditated for 7 weeks. And on the last night of these 7 weeks, he didn't know it was going to only be 7 weeks, but that's what it ended up being. On the last night of this meditation period, he had an epiphany. He had a revelation. The entire universe was opened to him, and all of a sudden he could see all of his past lives, and he could see all the lives that were coming, that were coming to the future. And then he could see all the lives of every human being that had ever lived, and he could see all the lives of all the human beings that would ever be on this planet. And he recognized that there were 3 poisons that were controlling humanity and causing them to feel this dukkha in their soul. The 3 poisons were greed, hatred, and ignorance, and they are represented in Buddhist art. The 3 poisons by the rooster, the hog or the pig, and the snake. The rooster, because if you look at a rooster, they're just constantly always pecking with the food, and they don't think about it. They just take more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And so they are a symbol of craving and lust and desire and never being satisfied. I actually feel bad for the pig because pigs are actually really intelligent animals. So for them to be like thought of as a symbol of ignorance, that's all right. The pig becomes a symbol of ignorance. This lack of understanding about the greater things in the universe, and then the snake is a symbol of hatred, because a snake will just lash out at you and strike you without provocation, and they often retaliate very quickly and very painfully, even to death. And so Siddhartha has this vision of the 3 poisons, and he decides that he figures out a way to be able to rid himself of the 3 poisons. And when he does that, he reaches enlightenment. And he frees himself from dukkha. And he becomes at that moment, Siddhartha at that moment becomes the Buddha. And he gets up and he preaches his very first, what we would call sermon, his very first teaching. And there are priests, there are ascetic priests that have been around him this whole time, watching him meditate, wondering what he's doing. And then all of a sudden he stands up and he gives his first teaching, what I would call his first sermon. And the first sermon, the first teaching that comes out of his mouth is the teaching on the 4 noble truths. The first noble truth is every person, every living thing, everything in the universe suffers. Dukkha, we've talked about that. Number 2, the truth and the origin of suffering are the 3 poisons: greed, hatred, ignorance. And if you want to end suffering, then you have to rid yourself of the 3 poisons. And there is a way to do that. Number 4. So dukkha, sumadaya, nirodha, magga. Life is suffering. The source of our suffering are ignorance, greed, and hatred. We end suffering by ridding ourselves of those things. Let me show you how to do that. And at that moment, Siddhartha is no more, and the Buddha begins his life as a teacher, as a sage. Some would say as a prophet, though I don't think the Buddha himself would use that word. And sometimes you'll see art of the Buddha meditating under the Bodhi tree, and he's touching the ground. So when the Buddha himself needs to be reminded of the Four Noble Truths and the experience that he had underneath the Bodhi tree, he'll touch the ground because there's wisdom in the earth. And so that connection with the earth, with the creation, is a link for the Buddha to be reminded of his path of enlightenment, which I always find to be a really powerful thing. And so notice how the creation is he is surrounded by the animals, by the trees, by his interconnection with the creation. We'll find out next week is a really important part of Buddhism. The interdependence of all living things on each other, with each other, is really important. So he starts to teach his followers the middle way. That the middle way to, the way to end suffering is not the path of luxury. Doesn't matter how rich and powerful you become, you'll still suffer, you'll still have greed, you'll still have ignorance, you'll still have hatreds. Nor is it renunciation and asceticism. You'll still end up being dissatisfied, you'll still have cravings, but in Buddhism, you walk the middle way between luxury and renunciation or asceticism. And the ways that you do that is called the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the middle way. That's the how. That's the fourth noble truth. That is the Dharma, if you will. And so next week we'll talk about what each one of these paths, or each one of these the Eightfold Path. There are 8 spokes, but also notice that they intersect as well. So they're not just a cycle this way. It's not you don't build on it just by going around the circle, starting with 1 and then getting to 8. It's not a progression like that. You can go through as well. And so these are the Eightfold Path, which is called the Dharma. And then next week we'll also talk about the Sangha. All right, so real quick, what do you think of Buddhism? Yeah, Tim.
Where did the image come? The Buddha with the pot belly, like, yeah, that's what I mostly see.
Yeah.
We could be Buddhists.
I know.
So a lot of the potbelly Buddha, the laughing Buddha, the joyful Buddha, that's Zen Buddhism, which is one of the denominations and one of the subsets of Buddhism that we'll talk about next week, which is mostly found in Japan, is Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism is it is very heavily influenced by Shintoism. Still Buddhist, but still very much influenced by Shintoism.
See that Chinese restaurants a whole lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of things move through the world, you know, but no, it originated in Japan. Yeah, great question. Other things?
I got to see the world's largest Buddha.
You did. Where is the world's largest Buddha, Wayne?
Very good one is. I don't remember. It was Kobe or wasn't Yokosuka. I think it started with an S.
In Japan?
Yeah.
Oh, Forrest, go ahead.
Darryl, I'd like to recommend a book that you've probably read by the Vietnam Buddhist who recently died, Living Christ, Living Buddha by Thich Nhat Hanh. To look at the parallels that he sees between Buddhism and Christianity.
Yeah. Thank you, Forrest. That is a great book. It's either Living Buddha, Living Christ, or Living Christ, Living Buddha. But
I can't remember. I have it on my Kindle, but I couldn't find it.
It's on it's in my office bookshelf, but I always get it confused too. But it's by Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a Vietnamese, Buddhist monk, friend of Thomas Merton and Dr. King. And he wrote a lovely book called Living Buddha, Living Christ, which is a comparison between the two and how the two teachings are actually quite compatible with one another. Thanks, Forrest, for that recommendation. Ellen, did I see your hand?
I was gonna say, if we could get rid of greed, hatred, ignorance, the world would probably be a better.
Yeah, it probably would be a little better if we can get rid of greed, ignorance, and hatred. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the Buddha was onto something there. Those might be the cause of suffering. They might be. Well, next week, like I said, we'll dive into the second and third jewel. And thank you so much for spending some time with me today on as we looked at Buddhism, one of my favorite things to look at. So until I see you guys next week, may God bless you and keep you, and Godspeed, everybody.